Okay, thank you everybody to this series of seminars that we are preparing for you. Today we have a professor, Dr. Marcelo Knobel, but before I want to say some few words about this initiative. So please let me show you the following. So welcome to the series of seminars in magnetisms and magnetic materials. This is an event that is organized by Alma, and Alma stands for Asociación Latinoamericana de Magnetismo in Spanish. So this is an association that is under construction. So we hope to gather more interested people during this series of talks so we can grow and make this a reality in the near future. Today session, so many of you are connected via WebEx. So the WebEx main room is this is the link that if you are watching in other platforms, so this is the link. So the nice thing about WebEx is that you can actually use the microphone to directly ask to the speaker. So if that's something you want to do, so you can switch to the WebEx room anytime. But also for people that may have some sort of inconvenience with WebEx, so we are streaming via YouTube Live and Facebook Live. Those are the links if you want to connect to any of those during any time in case that you have some problems, either WebEx or YouTube or Facebook. So please do that and stay in touch. So this is possible thanks to these people that is here. So these are the nodes in Latin America. So myself, Juan Gabriel Ramirez, I'm from Universidad de los Andes in Colombia. I'm working in magnetism and condensed matter physics. So I'm really honored to be here presenting this to you. But also I want to introduce Professor Dora Albir from Universidad de Santiago de Chile, Professor Francisco Sánchez, Quique, as some people know him, Universidad Nacional de La Plata in Argentina, and Professor Diego Muraca from Universidad Estatal de Campinas, Unicamp in Brazil. So thanks to them for organize and initiate this association in magnetism in Latin America that we hope that evolve in the time soon. So we need more people. So if any of the assistants or the watchers that are here wants to kind of join us to discuss a little bit more, we will have prepared a roundtable at the end of today's speaker. In this roundtable, we hope to discuss with you some ideas, maybe some suggestions that you may have regarding this series of events or any other future thing you want to discuss. So we encourage you to stay at the end after the session. But we have already prepared a series of seminars, and this is the list of the people that we already confirmed for the next seminars. So we have Professor Miguel Novak from Brazil, Professor Miguel Kiwe from Chile, Professor Marcela Andes from Argentina, and the list we still have to find the specific date, and the date will be is to be announced, basically. But we have them already in the list of our next speakers. So thanks to them for also supporting this initiative. So we are going to introduce session share, and we will choose a different researcher or professor to introduce the speaker in every time we do this. And today's session share is Maria Eugenia Fortes Broyo. She is a physicist, and she did the PhD at Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. She is currently a postdoc in Brazil. She's an expert in nanoparticles, magnetic materials, nanotechnology, in general, condensed matter physics. So thank you, Maria, for working with us in today's seminar, and we hope that we can also work together in this association in the future. So I'm going to give the floor to Maria, so she's going to introduce our speaker for today. Thank you, everybody, and I hope that you enjoy this talk today.
Thank you. Everybody can hear me? I think so. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'll present Marcelo today. It's a great honor for me to be here. So Marcelo is a full professor of the Institute of Physics Gleb Watagin at the State University of Campinas. He's now the president of Unicamp since April 2017. He was also vice president of undergraduate programs at Unicamp between 2009 and 2013, where he was responsible for the implementation of the interdisciplinary higher education program called Profis, which combines social inclusion with general education, for which he received the Peter Murani Prize in Education in 2013. He obtained an honorable mention in the Mercosul Science and Technology Award in 2015 at the category of Integration for the Nanoventura project. He was the executive director of the Brazilian National Nanotechnology Laboratory, LNNano, inside the Brazilian Center for Research in Energy and Materials, called CENIPEM, from 2015 to 2016. He coordinated the Creativity Development Center and was the executive director of the Exploratory Science Museum at Unicamp. He was a member of the Advisory Committee on Physics and Astronomy from CNPq, and was a member of the Physics Coordination from FAPESP. He is editor of the Journal of Magnetism and Magnetic Materials from Elsevier and Scientific Reports from Nature. He was also editor-in-chief of the Ciência e Cultura magazine of the Brazilian Society for the Progress of Science from 2007 to 2017. His research interests are in the field of magnetism, magnetic materials, in the popularization of science and technology, and in higher education. He has published more than 250 papers in international journals and 15 book chapters. He presented more than 80 invited seminars in several institutions and more than 50 invited talks at international conferences. His scientific papers have received more than 8,500 citations in the literature. He also formed several students that today are researchers or professors in different parts of the world. I just selected some parts of his extended curriculum. And well, it's a great honor to present Marcelo. Marcelo, now the floor is all yours. Thank you for your acceptance of our invitation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Can you hear me well? I hope so.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a pleasure to be here. So this is a new thing for all of us to participate in this kind of meeting. And it's a real pleasure to be here. So I can see here from the WebEx application, we have more than 60 people. From YouTube, I was following here, we have more than 150. So this is the kind of reality that we are living nowadays in terms of novelty in this new world that we are facing. So it's very hard to make a seminar. Sometimes we invite some speakers to our university, to our department, to our group, and usually if we can find 20 people to attend the seminar, it's very good. So in this kind of situation, we have more than 200 people watching, and this is something that we should learn about and try to make it more frequently. And I appreciate the work made by the group of people, Juan Gabriel, Diego, Dora, Kik, everyone who was thinking on this idea of the Latin America Association of Magnetism. And if you have some time here in Brazil and in Argentina, I know that it's lunchtime when we finish, but of course, if you have at least 15-20 minutes to discuss a little bit about this idea, I think it will be great. So I will try to share here my presentation, and the idea here is to try to give it in English, and then so that we can reach a broader audience, and also try to make a proper starting of these sessions of presentations to make a really introductory talk about nanomagnetism. And I will, of course, follow some seminar that I have been implementing and giving for the last 20 years, I would say. So I apologize for the ones who already know part of this seminar. I have been giving parts of previous versions of this presentation in several places, and probably a few of you already had the opportunity to watch it. Also, I could see from the list, and I'm very, very happy to have here in this seminar as well many former students and many visitors that we had in the past in the lab. And so it's a little bit nostalgic as well, this presentation. I'm so sorry that we are not together so that we could have a nice lunch together or a happy hour afterwards this seminar. But anyway, this is the situation we are facing right now, and I would like to extend my gratitude to everyone who contributed in some way to the magnetism community. So let me start. Speaking on coronavirus and the pandemic that we are facing just right now, I was trying to see some motivation in order to show the importance of nanomagnetism or magnetism in general. And I have found one interesting thing that I don't know if everyone knows, at least from our community of magnetism, is that the methods of testing COVID-19 right now, they already use magnetic nanoparticles in order to happen. So usually we take a sample from a person. This sample is mixed in a chemical solution that causes the protein envelope to open, and then the magnetic nanoparticles are added to the solution and with a specific ligand in order to bind the RNA of the virus to the particles. And by magnetic separation, we take out the RNA from the solution. It is cleaned, and then we can have the RNA for analysis in the PCR or whatever machine it's used. So this is something that we don't really realize that already sometimes magnetism is over the applications that we can have, and certainly the nanomagnetism communities should be proud of this kind of applications. Of course, much more can be done, and it's eventually being done right now, trying to make these nanoparticles available, more feasible, and not only for detection or separation in this case, but also for treatment or for diagnosis and whatever it's necessary for this pandemic and other diseases such as cancer, as I will talk a little bit later in this presentation. But before I start, I will give you an idea of the applications, a very, very quick idea of applications. I will try to be on time. I could speak this kind of presentations I can give in from half an hour to 5 hours. So I will try to keep on time in order to skip some slides and not bore you with all the details of the details of the physics or the applications themselves. I will try to make it clear that let me just show that I am from UNICAM, the University of Campinas, which is a public university in the state of São Paulo in Brazil. We have around 40,000 students, half of them undergraduate, half of them graduate students. And now I have the honor to be the president of this university as well. So with this slide, I also apologize for maybe not being completely updated in the presentation. I confess that I was working on the presentation I had some time to do it just today in the morning just before starting here. So I had no time to make a real update of the presentation. And also, besides being the president of the university, and as you can imagine, a really challenging time right now, I have also the duty of being the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Magnetism and Magnetic Materials that all of you know very well. I would like just to make a little bit of a publicity so that I can ask you to publish more on the Journal of Magnetism and Magnetic Materials, which is a magazine which has been around for a long time. It's a very traditional publication, and we work for the magnetic community. So the impact factor is steadily growing. We have the goal next year, or the other one is to reach, we already reached 1 year above 3 of the impact factor, but we are reaching very good numbers of the impact factor with a rather interesting perspective. Of course, you can reach, in a magazine, you can reach a very good impact factor by reducing the number of papers that you accept or publish. But on the other hand, we are doing that by increasing the number of papers. So you can see here from 2015 to 2019, the number of papers, the total number of papers, in fact, we reached something like 1,500 papers in 2019. So it was a record, and the impact factor is still very good. So the acceptance, so the quantity of papers that are being handled by our editors are around 3,600 papers per year. That means if you make a very easy calculation, it's almost 10 papers per day that we receive. So it's something like very interesting to see that we receive something like 10 papers per day, and we publish eventually 40-45% of these papers. So out of the 10 that we receive, we accept 4 or 5 eventually. And we are trying to deal with a very interesting speed. So the review speed is we are working hard in order to make it quicker. We are reaching almost 5 weeks of review speed. And in the online article publication time is reducing to eventually 1 week. So after receiving the paper, this is an average, of course, but after receiving a paper, you would expect to have your paper reviewed in 5 weeks, and then, if accepted, publish in less than 1 week online. So this is something really interesting. So I would really appreciate if you can consider the Journal of Magnetism and Magnetic Materials for publication in the future. So let me just show a very interesting picture that I found today, and I strongly recommend. I found this paper from one of our editors of the journal at Susumi, Hiroata. He just published it with a group of people a review on Spintronics. And this is quite an interesting picture that you can find. We went from the macroscopic magnets, so that we had here you can, the older ones, at least we recognize here a cassette tape or a video cassette tape, and we were reducing year after year the size of the information, the size of the bit that we can write down the information. I will talk a little bit more about this in few minutes. But then we went to a magneto-optic disk or other hard disks from a development that went from 1956 to 2000, 2010, and then we are now working on magnetic random access memory. And whenever we go down in the scale of the size of the bit, we are reaching different physics and different domains of physics that we have to deal with. So we have to work with the anisotropy energy, with the spin diffusion length, with the exchange energy, the mean free path, and so on. So we span this graph in orders and orders of magnitude, and we can really have to develop interesting physics and try to understand better the physics behind this phenomenon. So the hard disk is something that everyone uses. It's a very interesting device that has been developed from many years, and it's I think it's a technological wonder. If you think on even on the engineering of this, so the head to the disk gap is something like 15 nanometers. This is a plot comparing this to a hair diameter. So you can see that this is something that we should work with without touching in order to avoid any friction and any heating. And we have the magnetic film with the domains. And this is something that is not new. The idea of the magnetic recording, I think this is wonderful in terms of history of sciences. The first magnetic recording was made in 1898. 1898. It was a Poulsen in Germany that demonstrated that it was possible to record his voice. He made a steel wire pulling from one wall to the other, and then a recording magnet, and he spoke in this transmitter with a battery here, and so that you can have a current, a signal current that can change the polarization of the magnetic medium from south-north to north-south, and so on. And so this would be one bit, other bit, and so on. So this is the basic idea of the magnetic recording that was done analogically here in this wire. And when he changed the polarity of this arrangement. So in the playback arrangement, he just launched this card from this side to the other one, and then he could hear in this speaker or in this receiver his voice. I confess that it seems simple, but I have never seen this apparatus working. So probably there are some complications in the construction of that, but he managed to do that, and this was the base of the more sophisticated magnetic recording of the future that started with some tapes and then developed it to hard disk or disks. And the idea behind that is that you can have a track, which is here or depicted, and in each track you have a bit or a bit cell, which is a 0 or 1. It's a magnetization pointing in one direction or in the other direction. And then you can have the recording of an information in a binary form. And the idea is that you can have different domains or different domain sizes or bit cells sizes, which record this information. And the evolution of this was amazing in terms of the development, and this is I would say a decade that was wonderful for this industry. That from 1990 to 2000, for example, the size of the bit was decreasing year after year, and already in 2002, this is what I think it's amazing. In 2002, in the market, we had a bit size of something like 30 nanometers by 250 nanometers. This is already in the nanoscale by the beginning of the years 2000. So this is something that which is really amazing in terms of technology development. The problem to deal with, and well, if you see this on a longer scale, from the first drive, which was in 19 56, the IBM RAMAC, and you can plot that in the areal density in megabits per square inch. So you can see that here you have something like 90 million times increase in the density of the hard disks in less than, I would say, 60 years. Something amazing in terms of applications and development of a new technology. And here you can have some landmarks. So the first giant magnetoresistant had the first perpendicular recording and so on. So you can see here that there are many developments in sciences that are immediately transferred to the to the magnetic recording industry. And nowadays we have a very competitive price in terms of the bit, or let's say price per megabyte in dollars. So you can reach really even competitive to paper, I would say. I will skip some of the plots, but the problem is that we are facing, and more, the magnetic recording industry is reaching a limitation because of the bit size. As you probably know, there is a problem of physics problem that we cannot overcome in an easy way. So you have two states for each bit, which are, let's say, in equilibrium, or I would say if energetically favorable. The magnetization pointing in one direction and the magnetization of the bit pointing in the other direction. And there is a barrier here which depends on the magnetic anisotropy of this material, which composes this bit. And of course, multiply, this is an energy density, and then you have to multiply by the volume of the bit in order to have the size of this barrier. As soon as we go down in the volume, this barrier is reduced, and then the magnetization can jump from one state to the other just because of the thermal origin torques that happens in the magnetization due to the room temperature, let's say, so to temperature itself. So you have the torques originated by this thermal origin, and then you can have then the magnetization jumping from one state to the other, and the dynamics or the time that these jumps occur can be really well described by the Arrhenius sort of equation. Therefore, we can have a problem whenever we reduce the size of these bits in order to have this prevent this jump to occur. The problem is that if this jump occurs, you lose the information that was stored in this specific bit. So what is going on here? We have many atoms in a nanoparticle that make, let's say, a classical vector that we call magnetization, the magnetization. Of course, this is a very simplified view. It's a very naive view of a magnetic, or let's say a macroscopic vector. We consider all particles moments rigidly aligned, and then as soon as you reduce the size, when you have a macroscopic size, the equilibrium or the energy necessary to form a domain wall is compensated by the loss of energy that you have by avoiding magnetic poles here. So there is a multi-domain structure that is formed. But as soon as you decrease the size of the particles, there is one point which is the single domain. It's called the single domain size, or critical size, when it's more favorable energetically to have just one magnetization of all this nanoparticle with, of course, an easy magnetization direction given by the anisotropy, even by form anisotropy, shape anisotropy, or the anisotropy of the material here. And as soon as you reduce even more, you have what we call the superparamagnetic regime. So this magnetization is not it would like to stay frozen in one direction, but the thermal energy is high enough in order to make this magnetization jump from one direction to the other, very similar to the paramagnetic phenomena, but with a giant magnetic moment. So this is basically what we have, and we can make a very simple equation in order to understand that. Is the anisotropy energy is proportional to the angle with the easy direction, and then you can have here a jump from one state to the other, so to one direction to the other, and this jump is a classical behavior, is a thermally activated jump. Of course, we have also the macroscopic quantum tunneling that can happen. It's another phenomenon that probably Miguel Novak will speak about, as you mentioned that he will be one of the speakers, but I will only consider the thermally activated jumps that happens from one direction to the other. And then you can define the frequency, define a relaxation time, and so that you can have very easily understand what happens here. And so the dynamics is really fast because we have an exponential here. And just to mention one example is that the dynamics of a nanoparticle of cobalt, for example, at 300 Kelvin is a room temperature. One nanoparticle of cobalt of a diameter of about 77 nanometers, it's 30 milliseconds. So if you have this nanoparticle of almost 7 nanometers, it will jump from one state to the other each 30 milliseconds on average. If you increase these diameters to about 9 nanometers, I mean 90 angstrom, the relaxation times is hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's really, really stable. So it's very critical on the size of the nanoparticles, and therefore you define the regime, which is called the Blockade regime, when the relaxation time is longer than the measuring time. So if you have a measuring time, let's say 1 minute, if your relaxation time is larger than the measuring time, you have a particle which is called blocked particle. On the other hand, if you have a relaxation time lower than the measuring time, you have what we call the superparamagnetic regime. And therefore, you can make a lot of definitions, and you can find which is the critical volume to become superparamagnetic, and you also can define the so-called blocking temperature, when the fixing the volume or fixing the volume of the particles, of the average of the particles, you can reach the superparamagnetic behavior. So this is something that is directly proportional to the volume, as you can see. It depends as well on the anisotropy energy of the nanoparticle. Usually we have a size distributions in a sample, and we have to consider usually a log normal distribution function of size of the particles in order to well describe the magnetism of the particles. I will skip a little bit of the physics, so that to show that there are many ways in order to try to avoid the superparamagnetism in the applications. People are trying to use new magnetic materials in order to have a larger anisotropy energy, so that you can have a reduced volume, so that this product here, the anisotropy times the volume, keeps more or less the same. Or you can have exchange coupled media, you can have perpendicular recording, the industry has been dealing with this problem since the beginning of the years 2000, and they are trying to solve new ways in order to keep improving the areal density of recording. So there are many ideas I have seen in this review today. There are microwave assisted recording. This idea here is from Hitachi. They try to make a sample here with a stronger anisotropy. The problem is when you have a stronger anisotropy is that it's very hard to change the direction. Even if you want to write a new information, it will be hard. So that you can hit the sample before making the writing process, for example. This is something that was tested. It's not in the market with lasers, but I recently read that it's possible to do that with microwaves, and it's working. Also, some ideas of pattern media when you can store the information on the nanoscale, which is rather interesting as well. So these are the ideas of reading this information. For example, in MFM, you can have zeros, ones in order to store information in proper ways in the nanoscale. The other ideas, for example, is to have a completely different approach in order to avoid or to change completely the idea of the magnetic recording. This idea was made by Alma research in the IBM, and this is the so-called racetrack memory project, when they have domains which they can be driven by applying a current, a specific current, in order to make this happen, and then you can read here down the information. So you can have a configuration like this one, a racetrack storage array. You have the recording, you have the writing process, and you can have domains moving into these reading tracks to have the information processed here. So this is something that is being developed in the last few years. And other ideas which are radically different from these ones are, for example, use of magnetic skyrmions in order to store information. This is typically the idea. You can have a very interesting size population. So this, comparing the skyrmions here with domain walls, the skyrmions are a sort of structure, magnetic structure, which are rather stable and formed in some specific thin films. And then you can have good speeds and also some interesting critical currents in order to make to store an information and also to read it. So let me just show here. You can see the skyrmions traveling. This is a simulation, of course, of a skyrmion traveling in a specific magnetic materials, and then you would eventually have a reading or a writing head here in order to read this information. So this is something that we are dealing right now. There are many ideas of use of a new generation of magnetic recording, and there are many ways in order to generate spin polarized currents, and this is a completely new field of knowledge known as spintronics. So you can have spin memories, spin transistors, and a lot of research has been done in this idea. So I showed here the racetrack memory, but there are magnetic random access memories, sensors, spin diodes, spin oscillators, and a lot of new concepts that are being developed right now. So this is a really rich field which is growing every single day, and it would require a complete seminar in order to explain all these ideas here. But I think that this broad possibility of spintronics together with this nanomagnetism can show you that this is an open field where we have many ideas yet to explore. Talking a little bit of examples, I will skip some of these slides so that I can have more and more of these ideas to show you. Sorry about that, because obviously I don't have time to show you all these applications or solutions, but I will try to share this presentation with the organizers, and then you can have more details on that afterwards. Another interesting idea that has been developed in the last few years is the idea of using the magnetic nanoparticles with specific liquids, and then you can disperse these nanoparticles or microparticles in the liquids and have magneto-viscous effects. So the idea is to put together a magnetic nanoparticle in a liquid. It could be any kind of liquid, and then you can have a specific covering of this surface of the nanoparticle to avoid a complete connection of all of them. And then you can have a very interesting effect. When you have a magnetic field, the magnetic nanoparticles will go into the direction of the field, and then you can have a very interesting phenomenon, which is the alignment. And with this, you can have a very strong change on the viscosity of the liquid, and therefore you will have a change in the viscosity of many orders of magnitude. So you can develop, for example, here it's mechanical knees. You can have dampings for bridges. You can have damping for speakers, and a lot of applications in this sort of using the change of viscosity of the material with application of a magnetic field. Just to mention, when you go to the nanoparticle side, of course, this can be done also on microparticles. You can have microparticles on that, but you can have also on the nanoparticle side the idea of making a liquid carrier, a molecular covering here of the nanoparticle, and then you can have very interesting exploitations of these ideas. For example, applications of magnetic separations in oil spills to make very interesting applications in different fields. For example, as I mentioned before, in rotating shafts, in speakers, and other places where you need a sealing of a rotating material, and the possibility to lock down, for example, here the vacuum or something that you eventually need to put together. But things get more and more interesting when we go down on the scale. So just to remember, we have bacteria, which are something like 100,000 nanometers, cells, which are of the order of 10,000 nanometers. Then we have proteins, enzymes, 1,000 nanometers, and then parts of DNA, virus, which can reach up to from 10 to 100 nanometers, which is exactly the size of the nanoparticles that we can produce and use in everyday lab work. So we can have very interesting applications of these magnetic nanoparticles as contrast agents of magnetoresonance, magnetic resonance, drug delivery, hyperthermia, and other applications which are really, really useful and interesting. This is something that was just starting at the beginning of 2000. I wrote an article here for Scientific American Brazil with my good friend Gerardo Goya, who is a well-known specialist who now lives in Zaragoza in Spain, dealing with this kind of nanoparticles. And the idea is that we can use and tailor the nanoparticles in order to make whatever we eventually need. So how it works, it's usually we use iron oxide nanoparticle, which is the easiest, the one who is easier to produce, and we know and control very well the shape and the possibilities to have a very stable chemical synthesis. And then we make we can make a biocompatible coating, a functionalization, a spacer, and eventually use a drug, a protein, or a specific molecular key in order to have this rather complex structure to work for us. I will show you rapidly some examples. This is the many people here probably on this seminar is working on this. It's a very common and very fashionable right now application, which is the magnetic hyperthermia, which is the use of these nanoparticles for for a specific ligand. You can attach these nanoparticles for in a specific tumor or a cancer tumor, and then you will eventually have the possibility to put the patient or the sample into a vibrating magnetic field or alternating magnetic field and make it more, increase the temperature and eventually kill the cell. Also, you can have a magnetic carrier, so that you can eventually bring a specific medicine, a specific drug into an organ, into a tissue, and the easiest application would be to fix this place of a magnet or an external magnet and make use of the magnetic attraction in order to make the blood circulate, and then you will eventually stop the nanoparticles here in the place that you will eventually want to use. An idea developed by Maria, who presented me here. This was done in Spain during her PhD, is to use liposomes. So the idea is to cover the magnetic nanoparticles with liposomes, which are well known in other fields, and so that you can have an interesting way in order to have magnetoliposomes for drug delivery. For example, you will have a nanoparticle with a liposome together, and then you will eventually can control the way that you will eventually release the drug. The change here is that you can have a high concentration of the drug at the desired region and low concentration of the drug circulating freely on the body. So you can really make this happen. When it reaches the place that you would like, you can apply a magnetic field, break this nanoliposome, and then you will release the drug in the place, exactly in the place that you eventually like to do that. So this is the idea of the work. The hyperthermia, as I showed before, is the idea of making use of the hysteresis loop so that you can eventually have an alternating field here, make this moving, these nanoparticles move into a tissue, and then it will eventually make this tissue increase the temperature and literally burn the cancer cell which is attached. And this is something that has been very much developed. This is an example of already in a rat, in an animal sample that they tried the use of magnetic nanoparticles and the magnetohyperthermia in order to treat cancer with this sort of application. So this is something that has been developed very much in the last few years. There are many treatments. There are many people working already, working on human patients. So in different kinds of cancers, this is something that I found in this company. They are already having a commercial apparatus, and they are doing some interesting tests with different kinds of cancer. So one important application that I wanted to stress again is the biosensors. As I started with my presentation, showing the biosensors. Nowadays, we need more than ever, and everyone knows that we need biosensors in order to detect, for example, the coronavirus. And this is really, really an interesting area of nanoparticles in order to be explored. Not only as an attachment in order to clean and to remove the RNA, but also in the sensors themselves, using nanostructures, heterostructures, or whatever things that you need in order to make a quick and rapid detection of the nanoparticles. So there are many ways to do that. I won't go into the detail because of the time, but of course, there are many ideas in this very, very nice field of application. Also as applications of contrast agents in magnetoresonance imaging. So here you can see here, which is really an interesting application for you can really have very detailed information on the magnetoresonance imaging. Of course, we have a completely different open field in many, many areas that I won't have time to show here. In the biomagnetism field, for example, in the magnetic bacteria, in the paleomagnetism, magnetic inks, a lot of applications of magnetism in medicine, in the sensor area, in the magnetoencephalography and whatever you would think on. And of course, all the new field of quantum computing, which is another possibility for the magnetic nanoparticle. So I will try to just finish with an interesting idea that you sometimes you find nanoparticles when you don't even expect. This is a study of a homing pigeon. They have found, the researchers never understood why the pigeons can really sense the magnetic field of the earth. You know that they can sense and they can reach a specific area, and they eventually recently found that there are many regions in the peak of these animals. They have magnetic nanoparticles. How this is connected to the brain and how this information is processed, it's something that nobody understands yet, but probably is something that we can develop and understand in the near future. So I would like to stop right now. I know that I have been talking for about 45 minutes. I think it's enough for a webinar. And my point is that there is an open road yet to explore in the area of magnetism, magnetic materials, nanomagnetism, and I hope that I could convince especially the young students that are watching this seminar in order to keep working on magnetic materials, nanomagnetism, and there are many things yet to understand, yet to discover, and yet to open the mind for new ideas and new challenges that will probably happen in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcelo. Great talk. Thank you very much. So I think we can pass to the questions. Yes. If someone wants to make a question for the speaker, you can write here inside WebEx at the chat or even questions. And I don't know if there is any question in YouTube or Facebook.
So thank you, Marcelo. I just want to say that we experienced some issues with the YouTube transmission, so we apologize for that. And so I just want to let people know that we are going to put the video from WebEx back into the YouTube channel, so people can watch it at some point. But most of the people I saw, they moved from YouTube to Facebook, so we keep the 200 people in the audience.
Okay.
So I have a question just to start, so people actually get to ask questions. So regarding what you talk, so great talk. Thank you very much. This is great for students, as I said. So when I was a student, I always wanted to know exactly what are the challenges that people were pursuing. And I was really eager to kind of to people to tell me what is the things that has to be done to solve these big problems. And I want to know if you can summarize what are the things that you think that we'll be working on right now in terms of the nanomagnetism.
Oh, well, this is very hard. I must confess, and I see here there is another question similar to this one in terms of Spintronics. This is something that is really growing very fast in these last few years. I must confess that being a president of the university, I'm not following very closely the trends on the industry and which are really the things that are really growing and on the market. But especially we have been watching a lot of improvements in the understanding of basic mechanisms and the control of the nanoparticles on the nanoscale. And I am sure that there are many things that are being developed, but we are not aware yet, because many of these things are happening in a multi-billionaire industry, which is protected by copyright issues, by patents, and they are really keen on that in order to keep the results and of course have the revenues afterwards. But I'm sure from the point of view of the applications, the magnetic hyperthermia has been growing so much, and I think it's great to have, and probably will happen in the next, will be a more common or at least available in the next few years. There are many subproducts of that can also be used eventually in this virus, for example, and there are many few applications that we don't even know that they exist, and we could be further developed and are being further developed. Let me just mention one example that I found out a few years ago, and I was astonished to understand. For example, everyone in every single hospital, in every place in the world, must understand, before making a simple operation or a single procedure, they must understand the time of coagulation of the blood. In order to measure the coagulation time, we use a very sophisticated, which is not sophisticated at all. It's simply they test by optical methods the coagulation of the blood. We attach a nanoparticle to a kind of optical device, and then we keep moving this nanoparticle with a magnet in order to see when the movement ceases, for example. And then this is something that is made by optical methods, and we could eventually develop something quicker, cheaper, better, in order to have really rapid results, for example, to measure the coagulation time of blood, which is something that is done, I would say, millions of times every day in the world. So there are many, I would say, low tech low-tech applications and high-tech applications, which will be available in the near future. But I won't be able to tell you which ones will be available quicker or not.
Okay, we have one question here from Daniel Cedeño. He asks if there is any applications of nanoparticles to nuclear energy.
Well, probably yes. Now I cannot think of this right now to answer, but I am sure there is. But I don't know which one. I would need to look for it.
Okay, we have one more from Babakaran Tandapani. How do you think that the magnetic nanoparticles could make useful COVID-19 test kits? Is it by the way of protein extraction?
It could be, yes. Question. The protein extraction is an interesting part of the process. Of course, every single time that when you have to discuss a new applications, you have to think on the millions of apparatus that are already in the market that should be used. So we cannot always develop in something completely new because probably it won't be used because of the people who won't want to change the infrastructure that they have been developing. So we probably can have better applications like the ones that I mentioned before for extraction of DNA, but we can also have specific ligands for the virus in order to make a quick and easy detection by means of nanoparticle response or any sort of a sensor. So I would say that developing a nanomagnetic nanoparticle sensor would be a very interesting idea.
Okay, we have one question from Leandro Londoño Calderon. I would like to know, in your opinion, what are the current challenges in the nanomagnetism subject?
Well, I tried to explain many of them here. I would say that the main challenge right now is, well, it depends on the size that you, on the perspective that you look. Of course, the understanding of fundamental phenomena is always necessary and important. And I can mention hundreds of phenomena that we should yet understand. But of course, there are many application type phenomena that are using. I mentioned in that transparency, I showed some specific applications of spin diodes, spin transistors, magnetic random access, working on theoretical developments and trying to understand basic magnetic phenomena as well. And of course, in that sense, there are many people working on skyrmions, on new magnetic structures and so on. On the other hand, we have many people working on magnetic nanoparticles production and the use of magnetic hyperthermia. And we have a unique opportunity here in Brazil. We have as you probably know, the National Nanotechnology Laboratory, which we have many interesting microscopes that can be used. Specifically, I think we should use more the cryogenics facility in order to understand soft matter and so on. But also we will have now the Sirius synchrotron light source, which will be extremely interesting in order to make more studies on magnetic dichroids, magnetic phases, and so on. So I think that the Latin America community should now try to turn into further synchrotron studies in order to make use of this wonderful equipment that we will have in the near future.
We have one question here in the WebEx from Dante Galuzzi. Professor, in your perspective, how far in the future are we really going to see nanomagnetic hyperthermia cancer treatment being used in the hospitals?
Well, I really don't know, but it always depends on the market share, on the price, and the possibilities that. But my perspective would be that in 5 years we will be able to see some of these equipments already being used.
Okay, we have one more question here from Mario Lucas Santos. Thank you, Professor. That was a really good class. But can you talk a little bit more about biosensors related to SIRS?
Well, it's as I mentioned before, it's not my specialty. I was as I mentioned, I was trying to make a connection of this presentation today with the actual situation that we are facing right now, and I saw that the nanomagnetism is used already in this test of COVID-19. I think it's a good point in order to make this connection, but I'm not a specialist and I'm not completely sure how it works. But it's just making a Google search, you will probably find very relevant information on that.
Okay, let me see if we have any more questions. I don't see any here in WebEx, and no more questions in Facebook. Let me see. No. So I thank you again, Marcelo. Thank you for your
Thank you.
kind participation here.